Today you're going to learn how to start the P-51D Mustang. It's a World War II fighter, bomber, and high-altitude escort. One of the most unique things about the Mustang is that it has a very long range, which helps during long escort missions for bombers. The first thing you probably will notice is the 12-cylinder Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which is the same engine that was used in the Mosquito and some of the Spitfires. This engine has a two-stage supercharger with a constant speed 4-blade propeller. The armament is 6 50 caliber Browning machine guns. It can also hold 2 bombs, one on each wing, which can either be 100, 300, or 500 pounds, or it can carry up to 5 rockets on each wing. When looking at the wing straight on, you're going to notice this is laminar float wing. That means that it's going to have a lower drag and it's going to be able to go faster before compression kicks in. Unlike the BF-109K4, this airplane will be able to get up to 500 miles an hour before compression starts kicking in, and even at 500 miles an hour, it still is possible to pull out of a dive, although it can be difficult. In front of the tail wheel, you'll see a little door that's open there, and that door is the radiator. There's 2 radiators, one for coolant and one for oil. This door will open and close automatically in the D model. The tail wheel is lockable and unlockable using the flight stick. If you pull the stick back, it will lock, and if you push it forward, it will unlock. When it's unlocked, it works as a caster wheel, which means that you can do a complete loop on the ground, and it can be very difficult to steer the plane when it's unlocked. When it's locked, the rudder will steer the wheel 6 degrees in either direction. First thing we want to do is make sure that these radiator controls are set to neutral. What this does is it's going to keep the radiator open during startup. When you're on the ground, it's a good idea to keep the radiator open. If you leave this on automatic, the radiator will close and eventually the engine will heat up, which can be detrimental during a takeoff. Right before takeoff, however, we can turn it to automatic as long as our engine isn't too hot yet. Next, you're going to want to open the throttle just about an inch, and you can leave the mixture control set to idle cutoff. After that, you can start the electronics by flicking on the generator disconnect switch and the battery disconnect switch. Next, we want to move over to the center panel here. We want to turn the ignition into both and the fuel shutoff to on. Make sure the fuel tank is selected on the left tank. Turn the fuel booster to the on position. Open the starter cap. Prime the engine for 3 seconds. Now the engine is ready to start. During startup, make sure you pay attention to the mixture control down at the very bottom of the screen here. I'm going to be controlling the mixture with my HOTAS control, and I'm going to be controlling the starter with my mouse click. What you want to do is you want to hold the starter until the blades turn about 6 blades, and then you can flick the mixture control to run. Once again, make sure your throttle is about an inch forward. It will help the engine start much quicker. Sometimes the engine doesn't start right away. You can flick the mixture back to idle cutoff and then back to run. If the engine doesn't start, don't panic. Just release the starter. Hold the primer again. Make sure your mixture is to idle cutoff. Hold that primer for about 3 seconds and then try again. Hold the starter. Usually the second time around it starts real easy. Now you can close the canopy. And there's a few other things we can check here. One thing we want to check is the carburetor warm air control and the cold air control. I typically fly with these both full forward, however the plane does start with them both full back. Also, check that the flaps are up. Usually we're going to take off without flaps in this airplane, unless you have a heavy load. Depending on the situation, you might want to turn on the gun heat and the pitot heat. My suggestion is to almost always have the pitot heat on, and the gun heat will only be needed if it's winter. As far as lights go, you have the wing position lights, which can be down for dim and up for bright, and the tail light, which works the same way. On the other side of the cockpit, you have the landing light. Flick it up for on. The final step in the startup of the Mustang is to put the propeller pitch all the way forward, and then I like to pull it back about 2 inches. Pulling it back about 2 inches usually results in the RPM setting being just under 30, which is really nice for a takeoff. That concludes the startup tutorial. Feel free to send me any questions you might have.